Chapter 85. Bo is alright. Bo is here on Unzidora. Bo is an empath. The thoughts flowed through his head again as he dashed toward a wall made of the tough, rubbery material that formed all the impediments on the north of North Gym's morphable obstacle course. The course was popular, and even at Alden's level, they never let more than 3 people use the room at the same time. So this slot had been booked days ago. Glad I didn't skip. Bobby would have killed me. The trainer was standing off to the side, adjusting the obstacles ahead of him slightly every time he ran it. The blocks and bars were never quite the same distance apart. The walls were never the same height. Occasionally something would be unexpectedly loose or wobbly, and he'd have to change tactics. There were even sections where puddles of water could appear only to be quickly dried before his next run, though Bobby never made use of those. Alden popped up the wall. It was narrower than it had been last time, and the second obstacle he was supposed to be scaling from here, a pillar, now had a series of vertical and diagonal ridges and crevices instead of the horizontal ones that had made the job simple enough last time. He glanced toward her. She probably thinks I'm not paying attention today. It was true. It was only willpower that was keeping him from trying to sneakily research types through his interface while he did this. That and the fact that he didn't have 2 consciousnesses, so he was sure he would plow face first into something. I'm not sure I can climb that. Bobby gave him a thumbs up. She was wearing a striped yellow and black tank top and a bobble antenna headband. Even though Halloween was still officially a couple of days away, a lot of places were treating everyone to Halloween, including the gym. And Zedora took a more is more approach to holidays. If it was celebrated anywhere on Earth and it was even moderately fun, chances were it would be honored on the island. Give it a try. She called back. Remember your handholds. A minute later, Alden hit the floor, which had gone soft enough that it wasn't painful. He accepted a hand up from Bumblebee Bobby. Almost. She said. We need to work more on your climbing technique. Underbars next. When his workout was over and they had talked about how to adjust his schedule to fit around his new classes and a school gym period that was starting up next week, Alden headed to the showers. He rinsed off under a full rainfall ceiling while new age music played, and then he dried with a heated towel that had been folded around a pouch of lavender. This place is too expensive. And I know it. But they do make you feel good about giving them your money. He never knew what to do with the lavender pouches. If you handed them back to a bathroom attendant, they just threw them away. He'd been keeping them all and tucking them into his sock drawer. He needed to kill a few more hours, so he sat at the smoothie bar, drinking something that definitely had too much maple syrup in it to actually be healthy, and did his homework. To say he wasn't into it would have been an understatement. He hadn't even brought his bag with him when he raced out of the apartment, so he had to do it all through the interface instead of on his computer or tablet. He skimmed the science reading, then he watched an episode of a show that featured 2 Etonian farmers arguing over the ownership of a livestock animal that looked like a jumbo mole cricket. It seemed to be part of a historical comedy series about the farmers. Their argument got more and more ridiculous as the show progressed, until by the end of it, the animal got fed up with them and left both farms behind to go live its life in the wild, where it was almost immediately killed and eaten by a poacher lady. Not bad, Alden decided. For me. But I wonder if the people who were struggling to describe the weather today are going to be alright? The banter between the farmers was fast-paced and full of childish insults that probably weren't frequently encountered unless you lived with a little girl who thought it was hilarious to hear an avowed call to household appliances things like ugly butt. If you were listening without translation, like they were supposed to, wouldn't it be difficult for people who weren't used to it? Instructor Rao did make me recite a poem even though it was my first day of class. Is she a hardess or is she just phoning it in? He put extra effort into typing up what the moral of the story was so that he could record himself reading the whole thing later and send it to Kibby. This is what my class is watching, he would say. Since you're my first instructor, I wanted your opinion on my work if you can spare me your valuable time. She was going to love it. Finally, he typed up 2 paragraphs for Instructor Marion's class about the domestic violence terrorist situation, feeling ill at ease with the questions it provoked. And with the fact that he lacked the passion and confidence in his own judgment that his new classmates had displayed. Most of them were really sure that it would be no big deal for them to do the right thing, whatever they thought that was. Even the ones who had incredibly dangerous plans had a lot of conviction about them. He grimaced down at the dregs of his smoothie and sent the homework in to instructor Marion. Then he turned his attention to Bo. He checked the time. My empath friend needs at least 2 more hours to get his skill online so he can not be an empath. Maybe even 3 if I'm being extra considerate. It was so backward for an avowed skill to be the thing that kept them from being powerful. What the fuck is up with that? Alden knew a lot more about affixations now. It wasn't enough to completely unravel this mystery, but he could make better guesses than he would have been able to before he left home. He wasn't born with the ability to read emotions. But he can't turn it off. And it doesn't wear out. It could be a passive skill that's always on like a stat point. No, it would have to be a weak effect compared to the amount of authority bound into it for that to work, I think, and it doesn't sound weak at all. So he's been changed. It's permanent. Brain alteration? Is it a specific upgrade to processing? Or is it more like being open to other people's emotions is now a part of Bo's self on the existential level? That's. He guessed how it had been done didn't matter as much as the fact that it had been. Without Bo wanting it. He would never have chosen powers like that. Yet he didn't seem particularly angry at the system or the Artonans. Alden could only ever remember there being a normal, Bo-ish amount of negativity and suspicion toward either party. And if he had already been forced to affix prior to Alden's own affixation. There was nothing, thought Alden, staring blankly across the counter at the smoothie bar's frozen yogurt machine. When I first told him I'd been chosen, he didn't want me to talk about it over the phone, but that makes complete sense now. He is unregistered himself, and he's cautious about it because he doesn't want to get deported. That's an Earth-based problem. And when he was encouraging me to seriously consider being unregistered and choosing a quiet class, that was an Earth-based concern, too. He didn't want me to leave Chicago. He wasn't actually very negative on me being an avowed at all. Maybe it's just because there's not much choice in the matter, so why drag me down? But you'd think if he'd been forced to have painful powers that are at odds with his personality, there would be some serious bitterness and hatred toward the system. Alden didn't think he was so clueless that he couldn't pick up on Bo's feelings at all. I must be, though. At some point, probably last year, he was selected and had those powers dropped on him all at once. And I didn't notice. He tried to remember a moment when Bo might have changed. A period of particularly terrible moods, evidence of him struggling more than usual to put up with her classmates, a reluctance to spend extended periods of time with Alden. I can't think of anything. Am I unobservant? Have I been that bad of a friend? Maybe if it had happened around the time Hannah went missing? That could have been it. I guess the next question is how do I even be a good friend to an empath? Especially an empathic Bo. Bo could get tangled up in other people's emotions so badly he had to evacuate to his own personal nowhere, so. Okay. Emotional control was not Alden's best quality these days. He had far more good moments than bad ones. But the bad moments could be intensely bad. Thankfully they mostly came at night, and he just dealt with them in the privacy of his room. But if Bo was sleeping next door, then obviously. If he's having a hard time and he's exhausted the authority bound into the barrier skill, what do I do? If I'm in a regular level mood I can offer to peace of mind it. And if I'm in an intensity 99.9 mood, I'll leave. Oh yeah, there is also. He pulled up the contract he'd signed with the Vultas back in February. There, attached to it whether he wanted them or not, were forward chains that weren't available anywhere he could find on the internet. There were even videos of various pairs of hands hastily performing the associated gestures in bizarre locations. Someone had filmed their fingers swirling around with a grocery store's meat cooler as the backdrop. Yes, grandchild number 43, Alden imagined Elias saying on a phone call. I have decided to gift Feather's touch to that boy Emmy manhandled. I'm sure he will love it. Perform it immediately. I don't care if you're standing in front of a shelf full of pork chops. Just do it. One half of Feather's touch made your skin extremely sensitive. The other half would make you numb. It was nice that both halves had upsides in addition to downsides, but Alden wasn't interested in it right now. The only one of the four that might be helpful for dealing with emotions was this one. Purposefulness. It seemed to be something that would improve your focus. So maybe you could use it to control what your attention was on if you were spinning out emotionally. Like focusing on a task instead of whatever was upsetting you. The Blurs had conveniently forgotten to describe the effects for him themselves, so he had to guess based on the Artonan words in the chain. Probably they thought I would get in touch with them for more details and help learning to do them. Alden was curious about the chains and why some of them were even made exclusive in the first place. But it was a resistible curiosity. This one would be good, though. He'd shift learning it higher up on his overstuffed to-do list. Thinking about the Blurs reminded him of an annoying new problem that had to be managed. Someone was running around in Zedora who could call on your chain debt prematurely. And she was willing to do it, too. Which meant Alden now had to consider the consequences of whatever debt he was carrying hitting him unexpectedly. The blowback from the wrong chain at the wrong moment could screw you over in a big way. It wasn't like he expected Hazel to be hiding around every corner waiting to snipe him. But usually people carried debt for quite a while. It wasn't likely Alden would run into the chainer at any given moment, but the chances of a random meeting happening over the course of days or weeks were much higher. And peace of mind's negative half is so. Hey, he texted Bo, I'm taking a little longer than I expected. Finishing up homework. I'll be back in 4 hours. Then he headed upstairs to the spa. He'd seen it on his first tour of the facilities. He'd admired it, just like he had the rest of North. But he'd never actually used a spa before, and he hadn't expected that to change anytime soon. It's so fancy. He watched jellyfish drift through the aquarium wall that divided the check-in area from a lounge where out-in-robes drank herbal tea and waited for their scheduled treatments. I wonder if I could bring Connie here or if it's members only. He thought he recognized several famous people, though they looked different in terry cloth and slippers than they did in their superhero get-ups. According to local gossip, more big names than usual should be around over the coming days, since a battle group was being called in to deal with one of the annual demon destruction events. There was much more news about it here on Zedora than Alden had ever experienced at home, and he didn't think it was just his own personal interest in what was going on that made it feel that way. Mentions of it were everywhere. But local interest was still mostly on who would be involved and how they would get along with each other and match powers, not in how the fight would go. A demon would appear in the offshore facility where that always happened. A select best of the best group would destroy it. Nobody else would get to see anything interesting. It had happened so many times before that it wasn't worth worrying about. Alden did learn that the battle groups spent several weeks away from their other jobs, preparing. It was something he probably should have known just because it made logical sense that you couldn't have a massive disparate powers clashing. But news about the demon allotment had always been such an after-the-fact blip before now that it had felt like something that lasted only a single day. Do the Artonans even need us to kill a random demon for them, or is it some training thing that the Avowed should be saviors faction insists on? If giant, powerful demons were anything like the grasshoppers, then they didn't seem like something that would be particularly shippable. He understood very little about teleportation or the system's abilities, but he couldn't imagine that dropping a chaos monster on a specific location was anything but hell on magical resources. A man in one of the spy employee uniforms stepped around the aquarium and took a position behind the check-in desk. A special notification below his name tag on Alden's interface told him that the guy was non-avowed. It wasn't really necessary information in his opinion. It wasn't like superhumans went around greeting each other by swinging magic swords or exchanging deadly blows. Maybe it's more to explain why he has to use tech for everything, so that people don't think he's being rude. That did seem likely after Alden talked to him. He read his smartwatch for the translation, and nodded. A few minutes later, Alden had his own personal relaxation room. There was a heated lounge chair. 3 walls were screens that would display different landscapes if he wanted, and the 4th looked out over the meditation garden. There was a sound therapy playlist and a mini fridge full of drinks that looked like liquefied salads. Seems interesting. I don't expect to enjoy it much. He settled into the lounge chair, took a breath, and said the sacrifice half of peace of mind. Yeah, I know, he thought at the gremlin. I'm a good boy. Paying my debts right away. Alden suspected the next 3 hours were going to suck, no matter how great it was to be able to pay off the debt in private, in a spa. The thing about the bad half of peace of mind was that it hit above its weight. The coming half of the word chain just settled over you and took the sharp edges away, so he was sure that its counterpart only sharpened all those same edges by an equal amount. On its end of things. But the human brain was primed to fixate on danger and negativity, so that you'd be inspired to pay extra attention to anything that could hurt you. In practice, it meant that one wrong, slightly too magnified bad thought could spiral into something that had less to do with the magic of the word chain than it did with your mind and body overreacting to it. Alden had taken advantage of it to fan his own fear when he was running with Kibby. Now, though, there were no advantages to be had. Only his own heart rate elevating for no real reason and a sick feeling of dread making his stomach clench. He decided to combat it by watching Kibby's latest batch of videos. He pulled up his current favorite. It was full of evidence that the Quaternary's team of wizards and Avowed were spoiling her. He tried to focus on every detail, to notice things he hadn't the last time he watched it. "Hello, Alden," Kibby said, a smile brightening her whole face. This video is about Scarlet Ryabi T females and Stuart H, who is the son of the primary and the nephew of the quaternary, and how he named one after you. I have been thinking about whether that was funny mean of him or not. She looks so relaxed. Alden had hardly ever seen Kibby look relaxed unless she was actually asleep. It was beautiful. She was in the Travel Dome's medical area, which had been turned into her room. And it was such a wonderful child's room. She had stuffed alien critters on her bed. Except for the size, they were all anatomically detailed and realistic. Either Artonans didn't go for cartoonish stuffies, or Kibby herself didn't. The toys she and her sister had played with at the lab had been similar. In one corner, a brand new learning cushion, a short desk, and a vase full of promise sticks made a small classroom for her. There was a projection on the wall that scrolled through pictures she had chosen. Half of them were still frames from Alden's video messages to her. There were a lot of close-ups of Kra and Roro, and several pictures of clouds flashing with green light. They looked innocent until you realized that they were images captured from space of the lab blowing up. She definitely has shots of the crater she made somewhere, and she is just saving them because she hopes I'll ask to see her work. "First let me show you my hair," said Kibby, angling her head on her tablet. "Roro is learning braiding, but I don't like it as much as yours." That is just pure favoritism for me, thought Alden. He'd learned to do the French braid for her when he realized that having her hair done made her happier. But Roro must have been an overachiever in all things, because the healer had gone for some advanced level basket weaving with ribbons. I could do that now that I've had more ori-out practice. I can totally beat Roro. Her species doesn't even have hair. Kibby popped back upright. Scarlet Ryabi ts are known for their merry natures, their large sizes, and their athleticism, she said in an instructive tone. So maybe the son of the primary was not being as rude as I thought at first when you told me he had tried to replace your presence in the universe with an animal. She paused. It would be better if he were not being rude. It would be unfortunate for the son of the primary and the nephew of the quaternary to be a rude and thoughtless person. My next video is clearly going to need to be in defense of Stuart. She is so judgy. I think I should have explained that other Alden is awesome instead of just mentioning her in passing. You're merry, large, and athletic, Mary. Alden shook his head. And your coat was red. Perhaps Stuart H was being funny mean by naming such a Ryabi T after you. As friends do. So it may be alright for you to talk to him socially. She went on discussing Stuart's behavior in Ryabi Ts for a while. Alden focused on noticing other things about her and the room around her. She had a rolling space heater. One of the wizards with *H must have been doting on her, or else the knight herself was, because Kibby was wearing one of their magic rings on a chain around her neck. On her way to being a wizard for real. I know that must make her so proud. Oh. He'd forgotten. There was a thought he'd been avoiding every time he watched Kibby's videos. Not a terrible one. Definitely not an urgent one. But here it was, jabbing at him with those unnaturally sharpened edges. She's going to want to be a knight. That's more than a decade in the future, he said loudly and quickly, trying to kill it. She'll live a whole new life before then. She might take one look at all the plants and animals on Ertona and decide she wants to be a biologist. She might like her authority sense so much that the idea of doing that to herself sounds like insanity. Joe told her nobody wanted to be a knight when they actually grew up. Joe doesn't understand her at all. Or maybe he understood a different Kibby. One whose family hadn't died in such a hideous way while she watched. She'll want to do it. And they'll probably let her. He didn't know how the Artonans figured out the knight candidate thing. Obviously the reports had some private schooling going on, at least for the children of current knights. But they must have had some way to welcome in other wizards. Most likely with open arms. He could be completely off base, but he really doubted there were masses of qualified volunteers being turned away. Maybe she sucks at magic too much to be a knight. Unlikely. After all, affixations were practically the cure for sucking at magic. Aliens sucking at magic and Artonans giving them a way to do it easy peasy was the cornerstone of the whole avowed wizard relationship. Even if there's some elitist rule about who can be a knight that I don't know about. H will just smash right through it for Kibby if she decides to. And Alden was sure she would decide to. How could you spend months living with Kibby and not think she was the absolute best? I don't want it for her. I want her to do magic and be happy. I want her to go to some posh school like Leafsong and show up every last one of those wizard-raised prodigies. I want her to get her own lab one day, and I want it to be twice as big as Joe's, and I want her to have so many friends and fun hobbies that she can't figure out how to balance them with her deeply fulfilling work as the universe's greatest scientist. I don't want her to fix chaos outbreaks. I don't want her to face whatever the really bad kind of demons actually are. I don't want her to know what the affixation feels like. Alden knew you couldn't make another person's major life choices for them. Kibby was smart. She'd get smarter. She'd know so much more by the time she had to make her decision. And she deserved to become whoever she wanted to be. But knowing didn't change how he felt. And what he felt was an anxiety that was rapidly ratcheting up toward panic. And with the panic came a flood of his other greatest fear hits. It's only 6 months before I'll start getting summoned again. Something awful could happen to me. If I don't get stronger I could be in danger. If I do get stronger I'll have to affix sooner. I'll have to feel that sooner. I don't want to go through that again. T. Fantastic, he thought, holding the sides of the fancy heated lounge chair so tightly his hands ached. So this is what the bad half of peace of mind is like for me these days. What a treat. He forced himself to breathe in through his nose and out through his mouth. What if this doesn't ever get better, and I'm fucked up forever? That thought set off a whole new string of imagined horrors. The only good thing about them was that they were much less realistic and logical than the others, so he could distance himself from his own crazy a little more. It culminated with a fear that someone would walk into his relaxation room here, see the state he was in, and they would stuff him into avowed jail. Because that was obviously what the authorities did to upset teenagers. By the time the 3 hours was up, Alden was exhausted with himself. Fortunately, he was also too tired to keep going without the little extra oomph from the chain driving him. He could tell it was over when he had his first positive thought in a while that wasn't immediately followed by a panic spike. Bo's all right. I'm all right. Jeremy and Connie are fine. Kibby's with good people, and she's happy. Finally, they were all accounted for. Line of asterisks. Alden was still less emotionally solid than he would have liked to be when he made it back to the dorms, but Bo had texted to say his shields were fully up. It should be fine. It was night, and the halls in the Warren were full of people decorating their doors for a spookiest apartment contest. He stopped to compliment the guys in 912. None of them were from countries where Halloween was widely celebrated, but they'd really gotten into the spirit of things and gotten hold of paint that Alden hoped was temporary. There were dark red stains on the floor that made it look like someone had dragged a body down the hall to their apartment. When he stepped into his own place, the first thing that hit him was the sound of the pinball machine. He shut the door quickly. Bo was leaning over the game, and behind a new pair of brown tortoiseshell frames, his eyes were fixed and focused. "You'd better not be beating my high score." "I was going to," Bo said without looking at him. "Because I thought it would be funny if you came back, and I had put the cat's name in place of yours. But it's not happening for me." "Why are you so good at this?" "I have hidden depths." Alden walked over to him. "Pumpkin froyo. It's the seasonal special at the gym." Bo abandoned the game and blinked at the cone of dark orange soft serve. "Did you just pull ice cream out of the pocket of your pants?" "Yogurt. They are brand new pants. I had to buy all new workout clothes because I fled the apartment without thinking hard enough earlier." Bo took it from him and bit into it. "Please note that the curl on top was perfect. Before you ate it just now. Are you seriously fishing for superpower compliments?" Bo grinned. "It's cool. Don't strain yourself. It's very cool." Bo examined him. "What kind of training are you doing at the gym? You look worn out." "Obstacle course running today." "Fun?" "Actually yes." "How's your empathy?" Bo's face scrunched. "That sounds so wrong. I guess people knowing you're an empath means they ask things like that, though. It's safely muffled. You're free to hate me freely if you want to." He said it jokingly, but Alden wondered. "I'm still not mad that you read my emotions earlier. And I'm not upset anymore that you didn't tell me about being an avowed." "Technically I'm not," said Bo. "Not what?" "Avowed. I didn't agree to the contract. Yet. I still can anytime. The system throws it in front of my eyeballs every morning exactly 2 minutes after I wake up. You have to give it credit for determination. But you can't be avowed if you never make a vow, right?" Alden stared at him. "Sorry. I'm being pedantic. I know most people call contract refusers avowed anyway. I wasn't thinking that. I was just realizing that automatically affixing means you didn't have a chance to say yes or no to start with at all." Bo took another bite of his yogurt. "Correct. So it keeps offering. In case I want to sign up and get with the program." "You didn't discourage me from agreeing," Alden said slowly. "I seriously wish I had. So fucking much. A refuser wouldn't have gotten that job." Alden let the obvious question hang between them. "I thought Gorgon might have intended for you to be summoned more," Bo said, "to develop the skill somehow. Since he picked Rabbit. And I thought it would be okay for you." "No, not even that. I thought you would probably like the occasional trip to the Triplanets. You've always thought aliens were interesting. And I assumed that no matter what your skill was, even the worst Rabbit assignments wouldn't be bad." "Fair enough, I guess. I thought that, too. I promise I would have told you if I had some secret knowledge about it being the wrong choice. I would agree to the contract myself if I had better powers for it. A high-paying job once in a while would really help me out. I was a little envious that you could go the usual route." "Oh. You're a refuser because you don't want to be asked to use your skills." "At all." "Skill number 2, said Bo. "Specifically." "The forcing and magnifying emotions one." Bo nodded. "It can be dangerous. For the people I use it on and for me. Even if they ask me to do something pleasant with it, there are problems. By not signing, I have to accept some inconveniences, but it means I'll most likely never be called unless there's some specific emergency." "What kind of problems do you?" Bo turned back to the machine. "So. Pinball. Show me your trick." "It does sound nasty. Being forced by the contract to force someone else to feel a certain way." If it was helping someone calm themselves down after a nightmare, great. If it was terrorizing a prisoner while they were being interrogated or something similar, yeah, I wouldn't want to roll the dice on that either. He let Bo change the subject and went to stand in front of the machine. "Behold my trick," he said, as a new game started up. Bo watched him. After a couple of minutes, he asked, "Did you get a lot more points in speed?" "Just a little." "And dexterity?" "But I asked the Artona I system to pay special attention to my hands." Bo was quiet while he finished the yogurt. The pinball machine spat out 2 more balls. "I give up. I can't think of any reason for you to do that," he said. "You wouldn't say that if you saw how fast I can type now." "I know you must have a real reason. Is there some hand weapon you found that you liked?" When Alden didn't answer, Bo said, "Or we can talk about other stuff. I made it through all of your messages. Some of your insults were creative. And you've thrown yourself into a vowed life with ludicrous energy for someone who should be in rest and recover mode. That's kind of concerning. But how'd the first day of school go?" "Surprisingly okay. The academic part is more normal than I thought it would be. There's a hero track class called Engaging with the Unexpected that's, well, it's not boring for sure. And I met Luke Vilray at our tone in conversation. Short moppy harpist from Hannah's funeral. You bothered to remember who he was?" "I probably only mentioned him once." "I'm a good listener," said Bo. "And it was an S-rank Vilra. At the time, I was planning to follow up and see if he really did lose fingers. I thought it might be hitherto unknown proof that chainers could guess exactly what consequences they were getting from something like a luck word chain. He might have lost an eye instead. I don't know what that'll do for your theory." "Really?" Bo looked intrigued. "Might have. You couldn't tell. He was wearing an eye patch." "Well, that doesn't mean he lost it. There are all kinds of reasons to wear one." "He said he lost it." Bo's brow furrowed. "Then why is there doubt?" "I think he could have been screwing with me. Actually, he definitely was. He made me teach him the word squelchy greater than to describe eyeballs popping." "Do they even do that?" Alden shivered. "Anyway, I think he really lost the eye. And his sense of humor about it is pitch black. But he was having so much fun saying disturbing things that I'm not completely sure. I feel like I need to meet this person." Alden snorted. "Can't I ask?" Bo trailed off, and Alden braced himself. So much had happened to him he didn't have any idea what the question was going to be. "What should I ask about?" Bo said finally. "What's the critical, need-to-know information about Alden Thorne now that he's back home?" That's hard. He wanted to tell both things. More than other people. But also, there was something bothering him a little. "Can't I ask you something first?" He didn't wait for him to answer. "I promise I won't freak out. Or get mad at you. I think I know what you're going to ask. Whatever the answer is, I'll be fine with it. But if you don't tell me either way, I'm going to keep wondering. Have you ever used it on me? The skill that alters feelings." Alden regretted the question almost as soon as it was out of his mouth. Bo's expression was blank. "I'm sorry," Alden said quickly. He let go of the flipper buttons, and the pinball game ended with depressed digital moan. "Please forget I said that. Now that I've done it, it sounds wrong. It's like asking any other person if they secretly hurt people just because they can. It is like that. I know. Shit. Bo, I didn't mean to, but it's not exactly the same. You wouldn't have asked if I was any other person. You don't go around asking every sway on the island if they've stuck their fingers in your brain, do you?" He sighed. "I'm your best friend. And I kept information from you. About something major. It's fine. No, I've never magically screwed with your emotions on purpose. There have been mishaps, when my own mood was so out of control that I activated part of the skill without thinking about it. But I always reined it back in as soon as I realized." "That's understandable," Alden said quietly. "I'm sorry for asking." "It's fine. I feel bad." Bo's smile twisted. "Don't feel too bad. I'm definitely not a saint. I ought to tell you something, And the system doesn't want me to. Don't piss it off for my sake. It's pretty important. Is me not knowing going to kill either one of us? No. Bo frowned at him. But, Alden, that's an extreme tolerance level for someone else's secrets negatively affecting you. Too extreme. Fine. Is me not knowing going to seriously hurt anyone? I don't think so. The thing I want to tell you about already happened. It's done. Alden considered that. Then he considered Bo. His friend didn't have a lot of tells, but there was a tightness around his eyes. You did something you feel guilty about. Or something bad happened to you. Or you know something about the system, powers, or me that I don't. And you think not telling me about it now, after everything that's happened and after coming clean about other things, might be like a betrayal. When Bo didn't answer, Alden asked, "Am I close?" Bo licked melted yogurt off of his thumb. "Yeah. You covered it with that," he said in a tone of forced casualness. "'Kay. Then don't worry about it. Do what you need to do to keep the system happy. I'll bother it until it gives me a way to tell you." Alden squinted at him. "Isn't that the opposite of what I just said?" "Not exactly. Hey, don't roll your eyes at me. I'm trying to think of ways to get a magical entity to let me open myself up to someone even more. Do you know how not me that is? Ever since I jumped out of cat space this afternoon, the world's been nuts. I'm in the wrong hemisphere. You're alive. I spent the afternoon surrounded by teenagers who are even more emotionally haywire than normal teenagers, and that's saying something. You could feel the neighbors? That's what you focus on. That and cat space." Bo rolled his own eyes. "My range is good. Even when I'm not actively trying. I can pick up about 2 apartments worth of people in every direction. Fortunately most of them were gone for the day until just a couple of hours ago, so I didn't have to endure the madness for long." "That bad?" "There's a lot of longing going on around here." "Longing? I think it's a mix of lust and homesickness. It's an uncomfortable combo. And there's so much of both." Alden held laughter back with an iron grip. "You think it's funny?" Bo said dryly. "Don't read me. I'm reading your face." "Don't read my face." Alden smiled. "Anyway, about the secret. Don't worry so much. If you can't say something because of magic bullshit, you can't say it. For example, just whip off your shirt in the middle of a conversation. Why don't you? Holy shit. You're tatted now?" Alden dropped the shirt on top of the pinball machine. "It's so depressing that everyone is going to notice that before anything else. I don't think I've turned vain exactly, but do you know what I had to go through to get my body fat redistributed by a god-tier healer? Do you know how much gym time I'm getting? Did it hurt?" Bo was leaning in to examine the contract tattoo. Alden lifted his arm to show off the triangle of absolute secrecy better. "No. It's basically painted on. The Artonans like to get high as kites when they do it, too. I skipped that part. I can't picture Instructor P85. She's so straight-laced. She could be a completely different person outside of class. She probably gets drunk at parties on the weekends and deliberately throws food on the floor." "What's the contract for?" Bo asked. "I can't tell you." "Oh. I see. That's the point you're making about magic bullshit." He tilted his head. "After catching up on all your messages, I've got the gist of what happened to you on Munthegund. It sounds like it was. Did you have to agree to go to that place? Did someone make you do a side quest?" "No. I chose to do it," said Alden. "What was the assignment?" "Berry picking." "Berry picking? It's very rabbit, right? Marlick berries grow there. Or they used to. I assume they're just as dead or mutated as all the other plants now." There was a pause before Bo spoke again. "Did you know it was going to be dangerous?" "The danger might have been understated, but yes. I knew it wasn't the safest thing to do." Bo's lips thinned to a line. "Was it worth it?" "The berries. I know we're not talking about berries," he snapped. "We're talking about you volunteering to throw yourself at the first random heroic-sounding thing you found. Without caring about whether you were ready for it. Without caring what might happen to you. or what that would do to the people who were waiting for you to come back home. Like a jackass. I knew you'd be mad. The edge of the pinball machine was cold against Alden's back. It was worth it. Because of the little girl? The one you'd do it again for? He nodded. Bo looked away from him. After several seconds, he said quietly, I'm not saying it wasn't worth it to you in the end. I'm saying in the beginning, when you first made the choice to do it, when you decided to go to what was clearly a dangerous place, probably without even knowing for sure if you were helping good people or alien serial killers, why didn't you place a little more value on your own life? I did get paid well. Bo's head jerked around. If I thought you'd actually done it for money, I would be so furious with you, Alden. The pay was nice. But you're right. It was mostly me throwing myself at the first random heroic-sounding thing I found. He was surprised at the sarcasm in his own voice. He hadn't meant for it to be there. Bo frowned. It was more of a concerned frown, though. He was opening his mouth, probably to apologize since he seemed to be in an unusually apologetic mood today, when Alden said, It's kind of a relief that you think I was a jackass. For doing that. I'm using jackass extremely liberally, so don't think I'm afraid I wouldn't do it again, Alden said. That I don't even want to. For strangers. I already told you, right? In the message. The idea of doing something like that scares me now. It sounds horrifying. I'm going to Chelena North to get stronger. So that things can't hurt me anymore. Perfect attitude for a future superhero, right? He tried to smile to lighten things up. But it felt wrong. Bo stared at him for a long time. Are you worried that feeling that way makes you a bad person? I miss who I was. Maybe that was at the very heart of it. Maybe it was the thing he couldn't get over. He had been coming to recognize it over the past weeks, but there was nobody to tell. No reason to ever let the words out. Now, in the wake of the afternoon he'd just had, he found he couldn't hold them back. I wasn't done, Bo, he said. That day when I got summoned from the consulate, I wasn't ready to stop being the one who shook his head every time you talked Jeremy into a stupid bet. I wasn't finished writing the L. I was excited to be chosen, and I thought I knew what I wanted, but there wasn't time for me to calm down and process any of it. I didn't get to say goodbye to anything. Not Aunt Connie. Not you. Not myself. His eyes burned. Of fucking course I'm going to do this now. I'm still messed up. I should have stayed at the spa. His voice was thick, but his mouth kept moving. I didn't know I was about to lose it all. My home, the people who loved me, the dreams I had about who I was going to become, that was the last time I ever got to have those things all together and so simply. And so that was the last time I was ever going to be that Alden. I wasn't done. But I can't have it back, can I? Snot was building up in his nose. Why did even the pre-tears stage of crying have to involve so much moisture? Alden. I'm fine. I am. But I wanted to come back home to me. Only it turns out that I'm not here anymore. And sometimes it's okay with me that it's all changed. It really is. Even though I probably look wretched right now, I'm so happy just to be alive. There are some great things in my life that I didn't have before. Kibby, I'm going to make you watch all of her videos. Jeremy did it so you have to. And I can do magic now. Not avowed magic. Real wizard magic. I can learn all kinds of spells. Nobody knows, and it'll be a huge mess if they do, so don't tell. But it's cool. I think maybe I'll love it. He missed the startled expression on Bo's face while he was wiping his eyes. But even with all the amazing new things, I can't believe it's over. My old life being gone doesn't make sense to me. I promise I knew better. I'm not stupid. But I think I still wanted everything to be the same here when I got home. Just for a little while. Just so I could let it go instead of having it torn away. Orange cloth was thrust toward his face, and he blinked down at the shirt he'd just taken off. He took it from Bo and scrubbed at his eyes with it. Thanks, he said into the fabric. Sorry. You shouldn't be, Bo said quietly. Am I fucking with your empathy? No, I can't feel anything through the shield. Then, he added in a very awkward voice, do you? If you want me to drop the barrier, I could. Alden let out a choked laugh and lowered the shirt to look at him. God. No. Why would you do that? Bo shrugged and pushed up his glasses. I've never been openly an empath before. Maybe offering when you're upset is like the polite thing for me to do? You don't want in on my feelings right now. Trust me. We could cry together in a manly fashion. It would be a bonding experience. That's one hell of a bond. Hey, I told you I was taking my best friend position back from Jeremy. Alden blew his nose. I know you feel like crap right now, Bo said. On multiple levels. But, Alden, I don't think you have to worry so much about having lost yourself. You've lost a lot. Some of the things you thought about yourself maybe. You can't get it all back, but at the risk of sounding even creepier than I actually am, you're not creepy. I know you very well. When you came into the apartment earlier, and you were talking to the cat, I was feeling everything you were feeling. Do you remember what the first thing out of my mouth was? Alden thought back. No. I'm pretty sure it was lost in my shock at the fact that it was coming out of your mouth. Right here. Where you're not supposed to be. It was. You're still the same as always, aren't you? Said Bo. I remember because it wasn't something I was just saying. It's something I felt during that whole conversation earlier. I know how you think about things. And I know how you feel about them, which is even purer in a way. Though that might just be me trying to convince myself I'm superior to actual sways. You're not as different as you're afraid of being. You don't feel like a stranger to me. No? You feel like you, Alden. You're just a little older. We both are. And we've had a really horrible year. Chapter 86. Alden slept like a baby. Going to bed physically tired and emotionally drained on the night you'd found out your missing friend was okay turned out to be the perfect recipe for rest. When his alarm woke him early in the morning, he turned it off and hugged his pillow tighter. Bed is amazing. I'm going to sleep until noon. He was on his way to doing it, too, when someone turned on all his lights and yanked his blankets off with a businesslike brusqueness that was almost as cold as the air in his room. No, Alden moaned, bringing his knees up to his chest. Why? Because you have school. You ran out on your first day. You can't skip your second. Your new teachers will think you're a flake, said Bo, reaching over to yank the pillow away, too. Alden clung to it. It's not real school. The first week was optional. I haven't even moved into the dorms. But you showed your face, and they all know you don't have anything better to do now. So you'll make yourself look bad. Go to school. Make nice with the other avowed. Alden tightened his grip on the pillow. That was the best sleep I've gotten since February, he hissed. You were that relieved to see me, huh? No. How can an empath be such a heartless monster? Bo rolled his eyes. Did you really want to sleep all day? I guess not. But I didn't plan to go to school either. I planned to stay here with you. Thanks, said Bo. But I stayed up all night maintaining my barrier and sorting out my own return to life, so I'm going to sleep all day. And you can go to school. And then we can hang out all afternoon. He ripped the pillow from Alden's grip. Alden groaned. You can go late and skip the science lecture you hated, Bo said placatingly, tossing the pillow at the foot of the bed. It was a giant class, right? Nobody will miss you there. That wasn't a bad idea, and? Alden checked a blinking message. Natalie wants to come over to deliver my last few meals. That's fine. I'll just hide out in here. Why are they your last meals? She's not going to have time to prep for me as often with her classes. Maybe every now and then, she said. Bo raised both eyebrows at him. I'm not reeling you right now, but you sound mournful. You tasted her food. I did. How am I going to survive without her? Judging by the number of messages you left me describing various condiments, not too well. Can't I borrow more of your clothes? Alden waved at the closet then rolled out of bed. Come over. I'm running a little late this morning, so if you're heading up to Apex early again I won't be able to go with you. I texted her, he reported. Stay out of sight. A couple of minutes later, he received a notification that Natalie was at the door, and he went to open it. Hey! She glided past him into the kitchen. She was wearing a pleated skirt and a pastel blouse with a pattern of rabbits and radishes on it. Her arms were full of containers, and the smell of vanilla and cinnamon followed her into the apartment. Don't be upset with me. I know you're going easy on the sweets. But I finally got the cinnamon rolls right, and they're fresh out of the oven, so I just had to bring them over. He shut the door and breathed deeply. Natalie, I miss you already. We're going to the same high school. I'll starve without you. Natalie giggled as she set everything on the counter. She opened the fridge. The campus has so many options. You'll find something. How was your first day? Are the teachers nice? What about the other students? They chatted briefly, and the cinnamon rolls made an appearance. She'd even managed to make something that tasted so much like real cream cheese frosting that Alden was going to need to find a way to send one of these things to Gorgon. I know you said you were running late, so don't mind me, Natalie chirped. I'm just going to have my coffee in your living room with Victor. There's my precious boy. Who's a good kitty? Victor was rubbing his head against Natalie's ankles. Alden swallowed an enormous mouthful of sticky, sweet roll. Yeah. That's all right. He glanced past her at the door to his room. It was opened a crack. He definitely hadn't left it that way. I'm going to go change out of my pajamas. Be right back. The second he entered his room, he was met with Bo sitting cross-legged on the foot of his bed, polishing his glasses on the hem of his shirt. He put them on his face, and gave Alden a double thumbs up. What were you doing poking your head out? Alden whispered. What if she'd seen you? Bo grinned. There are certain things a person has to experience for himself. Right. We can text. What's that supposed to mean? You can't just casually mention in one message that your personal chef put all her freely selectable S-rank points in appeal and then never describe what she looks like at all. What kind of a friend does that? You risked prison to see how pretty she was. Yeah. And it was very worth it. No, it's not, Alden mouthed at him. She's a masterpiece. The system has outdone itself. And I barely caught a glimpse of her face. Are her eyes gold, or am I imagining it? Alden had spent some time pondering the eye color since it was Natalie's most impossible-looking feature. I think they're as gold as they can be without falling over the edge of fascinating into the uncanny valley. She must have been stunning to start with. I don't think even S-rank rabbits get enough free points on their first affixation to do that well. Did she choose some trait that boosts her appearance on top of it? I'm not going to ask her that. Just sit here quietly. I've been letting her and the other girls from her apartment hang out when they want. I couldn't think of how to tell her no without it being unusual. She probably won't be long. I'll throw up the do not disturb as soon as she's gone so they can't get in for the rest of the day. It's fine if she stays. I'm jealous of Victor. Listen to all the nice things she's saying to him. Even her voice is worth it. Alden rolled his eyes. Line of asterisks. Okay, 3 things, Bo said a short while later. He was in the fridge, opening all the containers Natalie had brought and sniffing them. Alden was boxing up a cinnamon bun and trying to figure out the best way to get it to the Chicago consulate. Number 1, Alden, you're friends with a teenage supermodel. Strong emphasis on the super. And she cooks. And she's sweet. I did not see your life going this way. I'm going to have some cereal delivered to the apartment so that you don't eat all of my magic meals. Cereal? You like cereal? Bo inhaled deeply over a container full of soup. I do. But you're really asking a lot of highly processed breakfast food if you think it's going to beat this. Cereal and whatever else you want. Sandwich making supplies will be fine. Number 2, and I'm not joking around with this one, you know you'll be in huge trouble if anyone finds out you're harboring an unregistered, don't you? At the very least, you would get expelled from your new school. Alden turned to him. Don't get caught. I don't plan to. If anyone who isn't you comes through the door, I'm cat spacing myself. But you need to seriously consider how risky this is. Do you want me to go ahead and leave? No. Also, how would you leave? Again. Cat space. I disappear. You send Victor to Jeremy. My time sense isn't good there, but if I try to do it fast I'm sure I'll be in and out within a week or so. Or 6 years later. Or never. That skill sounds dangerous, Bo. I think the riskiest thing about it is the chance that I end up appearing without my clothes in front of Jeremy's sister. Sarah would beat me to death with a wind instrument before she stopped to realize who I was. It might not be Sarah. It might be his new girlfriend. She carries a tennis racket. Oh, we need to talk about him and Kimberly Martinez at some point. He's dating an older woman. And he didn't even have to work for it. She asked him out at lunchtime in front of 100 people. When he was wearing the wiener dog shirt. The Dutch son frolicking with a ketchup bottle shirt. Bo nodded. That's the one. His taste in clothes. Alden trailed off. Then he looked over at Bo's taxi driver, who was lying in the spot on the sofa Natalie had just vacated. I don't want to jinx Victor, but has it occurred to you that he is a pretty old cat? You're age-shaming him as well as fat-shaming him now? I'm being serious like you asked, Alden said. You be serious, too. What happens to you if the creature you've attached yourself to dies? Do you know? Bo was quiet. Oh my gee. You don't know, do you? I'm not sure, he admitted. I like to think there would be some kind of emergency eject, but it's not something I can test. And you're mad at me for being reckless? Mine was a last resort, said Bo. To keep me from going insane. Or doing something I would regret until the end of time. Yours was some kind of Alden feels like he has to throw himself at danger because, no. It's over. Never mind. About the cat. You have to admit that if I'm just planning to be gone for a week or two, the likelihood of the cat dying right then isn't that high. Alden tossed the cat to die a treat from a jar on the counter. You're awesome, Victor. I hope you have 9 lives and live to be 20 in every one of them. But, Bo, if you have to use your escape plan, shouldn't you attach yourself to something sturdier? One of those tortoises that wander around gardens eating lettuce for 200 years. Or a young human being. You volunteering? Bo asked in a dry voice. Alden stared at him. Yes. Of course. If you ever need to. Bo blinked. Oh. Thank you. I've never tried the skill on a person though. Like I said, I haven't had many opportunities to practice it. And since I don't know exactly when I'm coming back, a house pet is actually better than a human in some ways. If I used you as my attachment point, you'd have to confine yourself to a private location until I reappeared. Victor's usually chilling out in a semi-private location anyway, so he doesn't have to inconvenience himself for me. Victor is a cat, thought Alden. What if he's chilling out in a garbage can? Or on top of a roof? Or under a parked car? Alden knew his concern must show on his face, but his friend ignored it. Number 3, Bo said. You should pretend to call me from a public location today. And we should talk. Just like we would if you'd heard from me for the first time yesterday, but we hadn't seen each other. You want a fake phone call? And Zedora is so incredibly not private, Alden. The informant. Oh, I met his son. He tried to sell me experimental right equipment. He knew all kinds of things about me. Not deeply secret stuff, but it was still unsettling. The informant is the biggest example. But at least the guy has a reputation for never openly violating the rules about private spaces. You've got to take into account everyone else who can get intel on you. Superpowers make it really easy to spy on people. Sways, audiles, people with legal and illegal listening gear. And there are probably 100 spell impressions that will let people pry without anyone ever knowing. I realize that. I can't decide if it's something I have to be constantly worried about or not. You have to be constantly worried about it with regard to certain subjects, Bo said seriously. For example, me. Unlike the rest of the world, and Zedora is fairly forgiving about unregistered avowed. They'll treat us like we're 100% legit as long as we willingly show up before we're 20. And even if you're older or you get caught and dragged here against your will, If you haven't ever committed a crime other than refusing to register, they just give you a probationary period for a couple of years. During it you have to agree to have all of your talent uses logged. Then you're a citizen just like everyone else and free to move on with your life. Having every power use logged sounds terrible, said Alden. Not compared to prison. And depending on how the legal system is feeling, that's where I might end up instead of in the Welcome Aboard program if I get caught here in this particular situation. Technically I used my powers to break onto the island, which there can't be a lot of examples of on the books. But I'm sure they'll take a dim view of it since I'm swayish. I would tell them it wasn't your fault. And then they would point out that if it was an accident, I should have just gone to announce myself the second I arrived. Alden couldn't disagree with that. So, fake phone call. Yes. Let's do it. Thank you. We're actually lucky I popped up while you were still in intake. And rabbity intake, too. We're as far from Apex as we can get. Your neighbors don't have spy powers. The rooms are all soundproofed. We can be pretty sure they're not bugged since you newcomers are well guarded, and nobody would risk it just to eavesdrop on random kids constantly moving in and out of the place. And the Sways are in an entirely different building here. I'm supposed to move into the CNH dorms at the end of the week. I know. You're not going to suddenly decide to register between now and Saturday, are you? Alden asked. He kept his voice casual. Bo fiddled with one of the magnets that held the weekly activities schedule to the fridge. You wish I would? Of course I do, Alden answered. But I don't expect you to. I swear. A lot of people treat Sways like shit here. You types tend to be admired, and some people are jealous of them, I think. Because of the rank-up potential and the one-of-a-kind powers. I'm just starting to get a handle on it all. But I know you wouldn't enjoy being treated like shit or like an extra special mystery. You should stay at home and be normal. It would make me happy for you if that was what you wanted and you got to have it. I'd fucking love to be normal. Alden smiled. But I'm not, said Bo. And you're not. I was agonizing over it a lot while you were at Leaf Song. You weren't supposed to get selected, you dick. It messed up all my future pretending to be normal plans. Sorry about that. What are the chances? I used to think you were going to be chosen. When we were kids. Because you said you really wanted to be a superhero, and I thought. Well, I was 11. I had some specific, crazy ideas about how the system chose Avowed. But I grew out of it. I promise your crazy ideas aren't as crazy as my current theories, Alden muttered. Really? I'd love to hear whatever you've come up with. But what I need to tell you now is, I don't think I can. Register? Bo shook his head. Alden swallowed. He had known Bo probably felt that way. If he'd wanted to live on Anzidora, he'd already be living here. But there had still been a flicker of hope inside him. Since you're here now. Maybe one day, Bo said. But I've got some things I have to take care of first. If I even can. And, honestly, I need to think. I didn't do a lot of thinking while you were away. No? Well, I did, but my thoughts were the kind of thoughts that made me sure I needed to magically evacuate from humanity, so. Yeah. Alden hopped up to sit on the counter. Those kinds of thoughts get erased when your reality changes, right? Bo put the magnet back on the fridge. I hope so. For example, I had thoughts about hiring other Avowed to carry me around in a palanquin when I got home. And they were going to force-feed me racks of ribs. Why did you abandon the plan? I'm in favor of it. I suppose it could always return if I have a few too many bad days in a row. Bo's smile faded. Mine weren't nearly that fun. Mine weren't really either. Do you know? Well, you can't know. But it almost didn't happen. Me getting stuck on Munthagund. I had to go to the party. It's been so long since I thought of you at that party. You were so unhappy about it, but Jeremy and I were having a lot of fun imagining you there. Please tell me you've got pictures of your costumes somewhere. Not a single one, said Alden. But that party kept me from picking berries that night. And if it hadn't, I would have been able to. Save Kibby and her sister. The next night, I would have saved her father and the scientist in the green coat. The only reason I didn't teleport in time was because Kibby was scared of leaving. We delayed so her dad could make her feel better. The delay would have come a night earlier if not for the party. It would have come on a night when nothing went wrong. On the day the system broke, I would have left a few minutes sooner. 3 more people would have lived. Kibby would have her family. He wanted to say it all, but it was too much detail about his real assignment from Joe for the contract to abide. The words wouldn't come out of his mouth. He cleared his throat. I would have picked the berries faster, he said. If not for that party, I would have come back home when I was supposed to. I know nobody hurt me on purpose, but things happened that wouldn't have happened if others had just been semi-okay people instead of flaming dumpster people. And sometimes, when I was puking up food because I'd guessed wrong about it being safe for humans to eat, or I was watching one of the lab lights flicker out for the last time and feeling like it was a metaphor for what was happening to me and Kibby, I wanted some punishment. For the dumpster people. Just hearing about it makes me want to punish the dumpster people, and I wasn't even there. I don't mean justice, Bo, said Alden. I mean punishment. If someone had sent me a space pigeon message while I was in one of those moods, and it said that Manon and the executives who owned the lab had gotten lost on Sleyca and were being hunted by the locals, I'm afraid I might have smiled. He didn't feel that way anymore. The anger was there, but it was a dull ember of what it had been. It was hard to maintain a hot rage when the corporation was completely beyond the scope of his knowledge or reach, and Manon was involved only because of a series of manipulations she couldn't have known would lead to the disaster. I wish the boater would quit sailing through my mind at the worst moments. Even if I go through with the email everyone plan, am I still going to feel like I haven't done enough? Manon is the... To hell with the dumpster people. Bo had just taken a mug from a cabinet. He raised it in salute. May the Gravex enjoy their feast. It was so great to have Bo around. Don't you need to go to school? I was just thinking you were good company, and you come out with that. You're a legal voter and everything now. You have to be responsible. No. Let's play video games all day. How are you going to fake being normal and give me my fake phone call if you stay here instead of going to school? Alden groaned. Anyway, I'm not playing video games with a person who had his hands magically speeded up. Unless they're puzzle games. Or games where we use foot controllers. Buzzkill. He checked the time. But if I'm going, I really do need to leave. 10 minutes ago. I'm going to have to run to make it to class. He slid off the counter and grabbed his bag. I'll leave you the laptop. I'll take the tablet. It's intuitive if you haven't used Artonin Tech before. Bo was leaning toward the coffee machine, studying all the buttons. Just as Alden was about to head out, he said, the hand speed, you did it for spellcasting, right? Alden stopped and his eyes widened. I completely forgot I blurted that out last night. Oh, I definitely didn't forget. Bo pulled on a lever, and the coffee machine started grinding beans. You're a wizard now? I mostly just know kindergarten-level spells. But you do know spells. As in multiple ones. That the system didn't give you. Yes. Bo turned to smile at him. Alden, you're a wizard? Alden adjusted his bag. Humans can't cast just like Artonans. Their spells are designed for them. I'm anatomically incapable of lots of them. But for hand casting at least. One day, I'm going to be a wizard. It felt simultaneously embarrassing and awesome to say it. Oh my god, said Bo, grinning more now. That's so freaking cool. It is. I don't know why you're turning red. It's literally so cool I can't even think of a way to make fun of you that doesn't just make you sound more awesome. Humage geek. You didn't get to be an adjuster like you wanted, and the rabbit spells made you mad, and so you just became a wizard instead? It wasn't that intentional. Who cares? I didn't know humans could even do that. Bo stared at him. Do the Artonans know humans can do that? They are aware it's a possibility, but I think it's such a distant one that they don't take it seriously. Humans aren't naturally suited to it. A lot of different complicated things had to come together for me to get there. and the Artonans definitely don't know that I've actually managed it. I'm keeping it a secret from them, too. This is terrible, said Bo, shaking his head. You just keep sounding more ballsy and badass with every word that comes out of your mouth. I'm going to have to diss your rank more until I feel better. Shitty B rank. Shitty B rank wizard, Alden countered. Bo winced. Oh great. Alden nodded. One word really could hold a lot of power. Chapter 87. Bo Lepescu sat on the floor in a bedroom on Anzidora, staring out the window toward the ocean. Through his interface there was a live feed of his apartment in Chicago, provided by the hidden nanny cams he'd installed. The images alternated between living room and kitchen. His parents weren't there right now. It was a good sign at this time of day. They didn't have friends or hobbies, so they could only be at their latest jobs. Neither of them had gotten fired or just stopped going in. It's either a miracle or... In the kitchen, dirty dishes filled the sink and the breakfast table, and a jug of milk had been left out to spoil on the stove. But it was only a few days' worth of dishes. Only one milk jug. The woman Bo had paid in cash to keep the place above the biohazard level while he was away was supposed to come once a week. She was obviously doing it, or it would be worse. The smoke alarm was lying on the counter. It must have started beeping and bothered them. I should have checked the batteries. He swiped the scene away and looked out at the Pacific. It was a cloudless day, and the small dark waves stretched on and on. A helicopter was visible in the distance. I'm not supposed to be here. There were things he did not deserve that he allowed himself to have anyway. Anzidora wasn't one of them. I can't be here. If I'm not a ticking bomb anymore, I have to go back home. He selfishly wished that someone would come and arrest him. If it happened in the right way, if he wasn't accused of anything too serious, it would be such a relief. To have what he wanted anyway forced on him, through no fault of his own. He would feel guilty, but he'd be able to justify it to himself eventually. He'd definitely be outlawed from returning home. And with summonses being extremely unlikely, he would just live here. He would start over. Alden worried about people hating Bo for his powers, but he didn't care so much about that himself. It would be unenjoyable, but he would endure it for a while. Until he'd made enough money to buy a shitty boat. And then he'd live on his shitty boat, just far enough offshore that he only had himself to deal with. He'd attend college online. He'd get way too many degrees, enjoy the amenities on the island whenever he wanted, help Alden figure out. I think he has a lot more to figure out than he used to. Hey! What did you do to my friend? He whispered to the system. The system didn't answer because the answer didn't benefit it. Or it was forbidden. That storm of emotion yesterday, not the second one that Bo had only witnessed instead of experiencing himself. The first one. The strange, sudden one right after they'd been reunited. So strong it broke through peace of mind and the relief and happiness Alden had been feeling. It wasn't panic. Panic was shallower. Dread. What was that? More importantly, why was it? Bo had thought back over the whole conversation so many times in the night. The dread had come when he mentioned the fact that the system offered U-types additional assistance with their affixation. That didn't make sense. I sparked a barely related memory from the moon situation maybe. Feelings weren't as easy to follow as he imagined thoughts must be. Someone saw a cute puppy and they felt joy. Someone else saw the same puppy, and they grieved. Maybe for one they'd lost. Or for a dozen other reasons that Bo preferred not to care about. He strictly limited the number of people he cared about. Incautious caring was dangerous. I made it to class on time. The second and third years are really passionate about this domestic violence terrorist problem. The girl next to me is snapping ink pens in half every time someone argues against rescuing the kids. I hope she brought plenty of spares. Bo stared at the words in a state close to wonder. Last night, he had set messages from Alden to come straight through, no notification required. His friend could text him. Because he wasn't dead. Just this once, the universe had been uncharacteristically generous. The pen snapper is some kind of brute. Do you think you could take her in a fight? He's lonely. Bo doubted Alden had even realized it yet. He was trying to deal by keeping himself busy. He was so hung up on what he'd lost, and so worryingly agonized about who he was supposed to be now in the aftermath of that loss. He had always demanded such impossible things from himself. Loneliness was probably way down on his list of concerns. But it was still there. He hadn't had time to form any real connections in this place. Casual acquaintances couldn't replace friends and family overnight, no matter how hard Dora tried to make it happen. "I assume you mean a physical fight," Bo texted back. "Probably not. Punching a hole in Jeremy's wall was my maximum effort. Disappointing. I'm more durable than I am strong. System's choice. Not mine." A brief pause. "What kind of stats will you choose when you level? You'll probably level pretty fast if you have to keep that shield up all the time just to be comfortable, right?" Bo closed his eyes. "Give me a way to tell him the whole story without screwing myself over," he muttered. "Or I'm just going to do it anyway and make me and you both unhappy." The system didn't answer. It hadn't answered the request no matter how many different ways Bo had asked last night. He was sure there was logic to its behavior, but it was a logic that was beyond human understanding. Most of the time he didn't mind. Other times, he wanted to smash its non-existent face with a bat. "Yeah. I do use that skill constantly when it's up," he texted. "That's one thing. And the fact that it's a dynamic skill is another. Working on figuring it out will level me faster." "Dynamic how?" "Developable. Flexible functions. I've been trying to learn how to filter out specific emotions through it instead of using it as a universal block. It's slow going, but I'm making progress." "Cool." Bo stared at the smiley. "Cool." Smiley face. "Good job developing your horror show of a power, Bo." "Cool." Smiley face. "I'm okay with it. I'm still your friend. I'm not scared of you." He meant it, too. And because he meant it, Bo had to live up to it. He had really wanted to feel Alden's emotions a few times last night. To check on him. To make sure he was real and okay. Being an adult about it instead of a needy, sneaky brat was hard. Even now his inner weasel was coming up with ways for it to be alright. For example, if Bo just happened to overuse the barrier now so that he'd be too magically fatigued to help himself when Alden made it back later. He scowled at his own thoughts and dropped the skill. He let Alden's neighbors buffet him. Some people would probably consider this immoral, too, but Bo personally didn't. If it was bad, it ought to be more fun. Instead, it was often like having one total stranger sit on your chest whispering terrors in your ear, while another handed you a teddy bear and a third shoved 20 different flavors of ice cream down your throat simultaneously even though you were too full to eat them. And while all of that went on, you were also all afraid of something environmental, like an earthquake. Or a swarm of wasps. He was familiar with it, but he didn't think it was possible to be used to it. Right now, someone had just had their feelings hurt. Someone was guilty. Someone was excited. In general, everyone was more relaxed than they had been last night. People tended to have a better handle on themselves in the mornings. So it was a good time for him to have the barrier down. He didn't know who these other teenagers were. Experience told him that he couldn't even guess their genders with much more than 50% accuracy. He was just with them all, though he didn't want to be. "Are you going to sleep now? Should I stop texting you?" Alden asked. "No. I'll sleep when a few more people have cleared out of the building." "What's up?" "Literally a person. An adjuster just levitated someone to make a point. I'm still not sure what the point is, but people are floating now and Instructor Marion seems to think that's more acceptable than personal insults, so I guess we are going with it." Bo smiled. "Send me a picture." Line of asterisks. In Conversation IV, they were supposed to be talking about the show with Artonan farmers who'd fought over the doomed mole cricket. This exercise was majorly impeded by the fact that almost nobody in the class had the vocabulary they needed to talk about farms or poaching. And a few people hadn't bothered to watch the video. The students had complained, but Instructor Rao wouldn't hear a word against the assignment. So Alden's ears were being assaulted by sentences that had him on the edge of both laughter and despair. The worker man number 1 and the worker man number 2 love animals a lot. I love animals a lot like the worker man. The pretty woman who killed the Transop beetle was a murderer. It's a story about freedom. It's a story about food. The kill woman was probably starving. It's a sad story. It's very sad. It's funny, Luke Volra said in Artonin. He was sitting on his learning cushion across from Alden, wearing a graphic print spiderweb sweatshirt so long it reached his knees. His eye patch was still present, but there was no fake blood oozing from it today. I don't know why it's funny, but I'm sure the Artonins think it's funny. It's a comedy, Alden confirmed. I think it might be building to a romance between the farmers and the poacher, too, but I'll have to watch more episodes to be sure. Given the show's tone, it probably wasn't going to be a serious romance. Artonins had so many permutations of relationship, and Alden was sure he hadn't even heard of some of them yet. The primary in Alice Art's single quotations massive shared household was a bit of a mystery to him still, and since Stuart hadn't brought it up, he hadn't wanted to ask. But the farmer-poacher combo was likely. By modern Artonin standards, 3 was the least intimidating option. They could devote just one half of their divided consciousness to each partner, instead of their full attention, so it was like partial intimacy and lower pressure? Talk slower, Luke reminded him. Sorry. He repeated the words more slowly. You not should being in this class, said Luke. Should not be, Alden corrected. There's a level 6 course offered this term, but they wouldn't put me in it. I asked. Probably the instructor wouldn't say yes. Some of the Artonin culture and language instructors have those works because they... He switched to English again. How do you say get off on fantasizing that the ritualized classroom garbage actually makes them important? That isn't something I would say. Unless I was trying to offend 9 out of 10 people on the triplanets. You're calm. And they were back to Artonin now. Luke's tone was disappointed. You would being more fun if not so calm. Alden untangled that. I think you mean boring, not calm. You're boring, Luke agreed. I will show you the I-grandmother 8 if you teach me bad words in Artonin. Alden tried not to picture Volra eating an eyeball. That's not necessary. And I don't actually know a lot of adult curse words. Boring. Luke picked at the edge of the learning cushion with his index finger. How do I say I want to feed myself? Feed yourself? You mean eating? Alden pointed at his mouth. Or are you thinking of another word? I want to feed myself, Luke said in English. How do I say that in Artonin? Maybe he was on topic now and thinking about the poacher from the video. You said it correctly, Alden said in Artonin. I want to feed myself is good. Luke shook his head. No. Like. He leaned forward. He was still speaking English. If I really needed the aliens to listen to me. Is there a special way or a formal way of telling someone that you really want to feed yourself? If this was a joke, then it was one too obscure for Alden to grasp. And the Volra boy looked serious. Okay then. You can raise the pitch of your voice when you say it. Alden switched languages, too, since he wasn't sure he had all the words for this explanation in Artonin anyway. For emphasis. If you make a request once and someone ignores you and you go higher the second time, it comes across as insistent, but in a politer way than shouting. How high? Luke demanded. Not very. They are pretty sensitive to tone. Anything that's recognizably above normal for you should be fine. I guess you might have to do it more than once if it's someone who assumes it was an accident. I want to feed myself, Luke said in Artonin. Then, slightly higher. I want to feed myself. Alden was so confused. That should do it. He said. Unless they've got bad manners. And if that's something you have to insist on in the first place they might. Why is this something you need to know? Luke ignored the question and leaned back on his cushion again. You can see my terrible eye, he said. Reward. Look. See. He lifted the patch. For half a second, Alden thought the other boy really had been messing with him this whole time. He had some barely visible scarring below his bottom eyelid, and the eye itself looked almost exactly like its gray neighbor. Oh, it's not quite the same though. The prosthetic looks really good. Why do you keep it covered? It does look great, Luke agreed, repositioning the patch. The Oculus did an amazing job. But people still stare at it like it's a hypnotist's pocket watch. Especially here where plenty of avowed are working around with enhanced visual acuity. Even if I eventually get an electronic one that tracks with my real eye better, it's not going to be perfect. And since I plan to have the system upgrade my own vision when I get the chance, it'll be even more obnoxious to constantly notice them all noticing. It's less annoying to me if they stare at a big obvious eye patch than at the thing that's supposed to be subtle. Alden wanted to ask what had really happened and if some kind of magical prosthetic that could actually allow Luke to see wasn't a possibility. He refrained. They spent the rest of the period with Luke struggling through a summary of the video. He seems to be trying hard. His pronunciation is so perfect. And it should be, considering his class. But if he cares about learning Artonin, why didn't he do it before now? Back home you had to search out teachers. And Zedora was different. Artonin wasn't the most popular second language choice, but lessons in it were ubiquitous. As he left class, Alden texted Bo. Luke Valra is really missing an eye, he reported while he took one of his sneakers from its cubby in the hallway and balanced on one foot to put it back on. Also, he's got strange concerns about Artonin's not letting him feed himself. If that's something from an obscure Triplanet subculture, I have no clue about it, and I'm glad I don't. Hey, by the way. Alden looked down to see Luke kneeling by a bottom cubby. The blonde boy was sniffing a black loafer. Did Lexi Roberts tell you he was inviting the school pariah to be your roommate, or did he not explain? Alden froze with one foot still lifted and stared at him. He said it would be me, Hoyu, and some guy from... You're the guy from arts? Alden's housing form was still listed as pending. He'd assumed it was a normal delay, but maybe they were waiting on the fourth roommate to be assigned? Yeah, that's what I thought. Luke finally put his shoe on and started sniffing the other one. That guy isn't much of a communicator. I actually thought we weren't friends anymore. Because we haven't spoken in around a year. But apparently we still are. No, thought Alden. No way. I don't want to live with a Valra even if he is number 2 on my Valra ranking list. The list is a list of people to be cautious around. Everyone on the list is a non-roommate. So, do you mind? I've been wanting to move back on campus, but I didn't want a repeat of the whole "oh god not him" thing I got last time I tried. I am texting you, said Alden. Hold on. Why? Because Bo's paranoia was rubbing off. I have no problem with being your roommate except for the fact that I'm trying to avoid your grandmother. Luke blinked up at him. You and everyone else with common sense. It's not like I'm going to invite her to sleep over. I understand. But won't she think us being roommates means she's right about? Alden didn't know how to put it, but Luke just kept waiting, with a neutral expression, for him to spit it out. She thinks the gloss bringing Chainer to Hazel through me means I'm important somehow. To your family. According to Keiko and Amy. I want her to forget about that. Luke's lips stretched into a wicked smile. Oh. He said. You're so innocent. I feel bad for you. He set his loafer down and started air typing with one hand. Alaya will never forget. You gave her most favoritist pet project Chainer. You got summoned to Leaf Song, died, then rose from the grave months later. Your goose isn't just cooked, it's charcoal. You just know off the top of your head where I was summoned? Alden wished texting offered more in terms of tone so that he could express how unhappy that made him. She mentioned it in passing during a meeting when she was telling certain family members her plans for popping the gloss debt. I've heard some of the old people say the name of the school on occasion, so it stuck out. My point, the Valra boy continued, is that you've already jumped in the ocean. Or been dumped there. I'd apologize, but one of my new policies is never to say sorry for things I didn't do. You can't avoid getting wet at this point. I want them to leave me alone. Me too. Is Alaya actually bothering you right now? Or are you just worried about her doing it in the future? She sends me emails offering to help me with things and inviting me to events. You ignore them? I politely reject them. Luke frowned down at the floor. Guess you don't need money or favors. That limits her options for befriending you. If she invites you to something that doesn't sound completely disgusting, you should just go and get it over with. No. Why? You don't have anything to offer that she actually wants at the moment, right? I don't think so. Then she'll be satisfied if you just make it obvious you're not avoiding her. She can only actively torment so many people at once, and she is already stabbing everyone she can with her pitchfork. Don't run away, and she won't feel the urge to chase you and put you in hell with her favorite pincushions. What is wrong with your family? Alden whispered. Ha! Don't ask me. I'm just trying to survive them. Luke sniffed the loafer one last time and stuck it on his foot. But if that's how you feel, I'll tell Lexi not to bother. It would almost be a point of pride for me to earn a few more jabs of the fork for associating with you. I'm going for a family record, see? Guess there's no reason to spread the misery around though. Alden finished tying his own shoe while he thought about it. He absolutely hated the idea that he was choosing his high school roommates based on nerves about an old politician he'd never met pestering him in the future. I lived with tiny demons flying through the walls for months. Why the heck should Olive be a factor in my current living arrangements? It was giving the specter of her more power over him than she actually had. Wasn't it? It was also just wrong to avoid someone solely because of their relatives. You should room with us, he said. At least I've actually spoken to you. I haven't even properly met Lexi and Hoyu. Unless you count Lexi almost cutting me in half with a whip as a normal getting-to-know-you activity. Normal for certain kinds of avowed maybe. How did you end up with them? I don't know anyone else either. They seemed like the least crazy options out of the remaining people in my incoming class. I guess you wouldn't know anyone since you came from the real world. Luke stood and hefted his backpack onto his shoulders. America. Chicago. They make some of the best harps on the planet there. Alden was surprised by the description. They do? Yes. Was it great living there? I like it a lot. Alden started down the hall toward the stairs. Luke followed after him. Have you ever been to Austria? No. I wasn't rich enough to travel around like that. I got to go once. Before I affixed. To Vienna. I wanted to move there. They reached the door to the stairwell, and Alden held it open for a group of students. Cheater, greater than one of them muttered as he swept past Lute. Lute stared straight at the wall like he hadn't heard him. Alden looked after the group. A couple were glancing back over their shoulders to stare at Lute in a way that was definitely unfriendly. Did you call yourself the school pariah? Alden asked when the others were out of earshot. You did notice that the whole conversation class sits 8 feet away from me like I have some rare incurable disease, didn't you? Is it just your family? Luke's gray eye met his. Under normal circumstances, I don't think most people our age would care. Tons of students have important relatives around here. But the gloss was major, memorable magic that Alaya had only used twice before now as far as anyone knows. And I'm considered an accomplice. Was he an accomplice? From what Alden knew, Alaya had somehow applied the high-powered chain to and maybe through all of the family members to make it stronger or more effective. Had they had to consent to that, or was it just something she could do? You haven't heard any gossip about it yet? Luke asked. Just newspaper headlines. Not school gossip. It's only my second day on campus. Well, I'm in high school, so it's the high school gossip I get to enjoy. Not the political stuff. And the high school gossip is that every good thing that has ever happened to me was caused by me using my evil chainer powers, and every bad thing that happens to me from here on out is proof that I've been using my evil chainer powers even more. That would really suck. For every accomplishment to be attributed to luck. And every misfortune to be something people thought you deserved. I don't even know any powerful luck chains, Luke said. He pointed at his eye. And if I did, they are way too expensive. Your class is extremely odd, Alden said. Sorry people blame you for your family's decisions. You have no idea. Truly, the family advertising about how the class works is beyond misleading. Luke headed into the stairwell. And the hatred isn't completely unfair, I guess. Ultimately, I did agree to be part of the Boulder Cabal. But I didn't realize I was signing up to have a once-in-a-generation chain tied around my neck right off the bat. He headed down the steps, his fingers trailing along the handrail. Maybe it's getting better. His voice echoed off the block walls. I've got roommates now, apparently. And it's been an entire month since somebody pissed in my shoes. Tobe continued. Thanks for listening.